Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It has been a long time since I have done a declutter video. I started decluttering my collection when I was on maternity leave at the very beginning of the year. And then I went back to work and then I quit my job and then it was just like this big thing and then quarantine happened and it's just been a thing, okay? But we're back at it. This has been a category that I have been dreading, to be honest, because I have so many. And every time I do one of these, I feel like I somehow collect, like they just keep coming. All these eyeshadow palettes, where do they come from? I also seem to have a really hard time parting with eyeshadow palettes. I don't really know what it is about them, but I do. I'm gonna try to be kind of sort of cutthroat in this video, but there's also quite a few new ones in this collection as well. So I don't know. Let's just hop into it. Okay, some that I know for sure I'm keeping are my Natasha Denona palettes. These are so dang expensive that I don't know that I could ever actually part with them unless there's one that I truly just never use. But at this point in time, I do use all of them at least occasionally. So I don't feel like I'm ready to declutter any of them. But in case you don't know the ones I have in my collection and maybe you're just curious, I have the Natasha Denona Love palette. So this is the newer one that was released kind of around Valentine's Day this year. I have the Biba palette. This is probably my all-time favorite palette, just period, out of all my palettes. It's her neutral palette. I love this palette so much. I have the Tropic palette, and if there was any that I was considering decluttering, it would be this one, simply because the colors are a little bit bright and wild, and I'm not typically a bright and wild eyeshadow person, but I do dip into this palette quite frequently actually because of these colors right here. The more kind of like peachy neutrals over here, and they're all matte. So I do use this palette quite frequently, but of all of them, that's the one I use the least. I have the Lila palette, which is more like purpley cool tones. I have the Sunset palette, which is definite warm tones. This one has been really strange. The last few times I've opened it, there's like a almost like an oil that has secreted from some of the colors, and it gets all over. It's very, very strange. And so I don't know what that's all about, but a couple of the colors have like this oil around them. It's so bizarre. I'm not a huge like super warm shadow fan anymore. I tend to be more of just like the neutral, like not too cool, not too warm. This actually I might use less frequently than the Tropics palette, but they're both, I'm not ready to part with either yet. The Star palette I have had, this is the one I've had the longest. I used this on my wedding day. It's a very special palette to me. I don't know that I will ever get rid of it. You can tell it's well loved for sure. So those are my big Natasha Denonas. I do have a couple of her little ones too. I think this is it. This one I received as a gift for Christmas from my sister a couple of years ago. It was a holiday palette. I actually don't use this one as much as I thought I would. There isn't many mattes in it, and I think that's probably why. There's just that matte in the middle. But I do like to use this color right here. I saw this video where somebody, I think it was Samantha Ravindal, took all of her Natasha Denona palettes, popped all the colors out of all of them, and made like her own palette of the colors that she used the most. And I kind of thought that was genius, but then it kind of sort of gave me a little bit of anxiety because I was like, what if you wanted to put those back at one point? You wouldn't know which one went in which palette, you know what I mean? Anyways, and then the three minis that I have are the Mini Glam palette, the Mini Retro palette, and the Mini Nude palette. This is probably, aside from the Biba palette, my most used. It's just so tiny and like easy to travel with. So I'm not ready to part with any of my Natasha Denonas yet. It helps if I go by brand. So I think I'm gonna pull out my Urban Decay palettes next. I recently did a video on the Urban Decay Naked palettes where I ranked all of them, like from most favorite to least favorite. I only have 3 left in my collection. I used to have almost all of them. I do think I want to get rid of the Naked 3 palette. I do like this one. It's one of my top favorites, but it's so old that I think the formula has just gone kind of chalky and bad. When I was swatching this in that video, the colors just weren't nearly what they used to be as far as pigmentation goes and blendability goes. So I am gonna go ahead and part with this. I do wanna do the palette tag that's going around where people are talking about their most used palettes and their least used palettes and their most expensive palette and their cheapest palette, yada yada. So I'm gonna keep this because this is my oldest palette and I want it for that video, but after that it's gonna go in the trash can. It's just too old. I don't even want to sell it or give it to anybody. And then these two I do want to keep. The Naked Reloaded, I want to try to use this a little bit more. When I first got this, I did really enjoy it, and I think it just kind of got pushed to the side because I use other palettes a little bit more frequently and they just call to me a little bit more. But I want to use this one because the color story is very nice. There's a lot of those neutral browns, you know, not too cool, not too warm, and then the shimmers in it are really nice too. So I do want to use that one a little bit more. And then the Naked Original, this is discontinued. This is the second one I have bought. The original one I decluttered a couple of years ago and then I rebought it and now it's discontinued. And so this is another one that I'm going to have a really hard time ever decluttering because I just don't know. I'll never be able to buy it again. Well, so far I've decluttered one, so I'm not doing so hot here. Let's talk about Too Faced next. I do think I want to declutter some Too Faced. This is a brand where I feel like I just collect these palettes and somehow I end up with like a million. And I'm like, where the heck did all of these palettes even come from? Okay, my newest, so these are all my Too Faced palettes. My newest of the bunch is the Born This Way palette. I do really like this palette. I think the shimmers in this palette are kind of lackluster. They really aren't the best shimmers that Too Faced has ever created, but the mattes in this palette are really nice and the color story is just perfect. Like, I feel like this is kind of like a really good starter palette if you ever needed just like one palette to get yourself started or maybe to travel with. Like, this is such a good color story and it's right up my alley with like the pinky neutrals, you know, nude neutrals. So again, the shimmers aren't my favorite, but the mattes are, so I am going to keep this one. That said, I do have the, oh, I'm missing, oh, it's right here, the Natural Matte palette. I'm going to go ahead and declutter this one. I've hung on to this for a while and quite frankly it's probably pretty old. It's almost as old I think as the Naked 3 palette. This is the natural palette but all mattes. They do have one where it's all like it's a mixture of shimmers and stuff like that. I've had them both throughout the years. I've had multiples of this one throughout the years, but I just don't reach for this very much at all. I can't even remember the last time I used this palette, so I'm gonna go ahead and declutter that. The Too Faced Just Peachy Mattes, I'm also going to declutter. I've hung on to this one for years and years through many declutters. If you've watched my declutters in the past, I've said like, no, maybe I'll use it. And guess what? I haven't used it since that last declutter video. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this one. You can tell just by looking at the shadows that I've dug into a couple of them here and there. And the color story is nice, but it's just, I don't use the super warm neutrals very much anymore, and quite frankly, if I am going to, I'll probably pull for my Natasha Denona Sunset palette just because I like the formula of this one better and it was much more expensive. So if you look at the color story of both of these palettes, they're so stinking similar. Okay, so I have the Sweet Peach palette, the Semi-Sweet Chocolate Bar palette, both of the gingerbread palettes, and the Hot Buttered Rum palette. So this was a newer one that I bought for holiday this year. I thought I would reach for this more because it does have really nice colors in it. I mean, you do have this super neutral, I mean, it's literally yellow right here. But if you take that one out, it is more of just like a neutral nude little tiny palette. I think, again, I've just gotten so caught up with using other palettes that I kind of forgot about this one. So I am going to be traveling soon. I might throw this one in my travel bag just to force myself to use it a little bit more, and then I can decide if I really like it or not. So I don't want to get rid of this one. I really haven't had a chance to use it too much. Keeping that one. I do honestly really love my gingerbread palettes. I know people weren't impressed with this year's Extra Spicy, but I really like it a lot. I bought it on launch day and I really like it. So these are two of my most used Too Faced palettes. I use these more than the Sweet Peach palette, if I'm being completely honest. So I think because of that, I do want to keep both of them. Okay, so the Semi-Sweet Chocolate Bar palette is one of those that it's been discontinued. And because of that, I will never be able to find it again. if I wanted to repurchase it. I look at this color story and it's not as vibrant. It kind of looks chalky. I don't know that I would ever pull for this over something like my Natasha Denona Biba. If I was going to do a neutral look, I just don't know that I would pull for this, you know, ever again, which is kind of sad to say, but you look at the color story, you got your matte black, which is in both of them. You got like your tan, that's in both of them. You have this pop of blue, but I never really used that anyways. So I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think I'm going to declutter this. It doesn't really even smell like chocolate anymore, so that kind of tells me that it's gone bad. This is also a Too Faced palette. I just realized the Chocolate Bonbon palette. I really like this one. I think of all the chocolate bar palettes, this one is my favorite. I know most people, this was their least favorite, but I actually really enjoyed this palette. It's the most cool toned of the bunch, and I don't have a ton of cool toned palettes, which is why I think I like this one. This one also lost its chocolate smell. At one point it smelled like chocolate. This one is also discontinued, so if I got rid of it, I would never be able to find it again. And I don't know that I have a ton of these cool toned colors. I mean, maybe the Natasha Denona Biba palette. I mean, yeah, you got your hot pink. I mean, but this one does have a lot of these like neutral mid-tone brownish taupe colors that the Biba palette doesn't have. So I am gonna go ahead and keep the Bonbon palette. Okay guys, the Sweet Peach palette. I am hemming and hawing because there's just so many memories behind this palette. This is one that I went hunting for. I remember the Sweet Peach madness, and I just worked so hard to get my hands on this. And then when I did, I found a couple of them, so I did a giveaway, and it was one of the first giveaways that I did for you guys. I just have a really hard time letting go of the memory behind this palette. If I'm being honest, I really don't use this palette very much. I do use it, but I just don't use it that much. And it is that super warm, neutral color story where I kind of think back to, well, can I use the Sunset palette? Probably, but there isn't this like pinky peach in there. I don't know. I'm gonna set this one as a maybe, just because I do have a really hard time letting go of that one. And I'm gonna move on. This I'm getting rid of. I got this in PR a while back. It's just so bulky and weird and awkward to store. It doesn't fit well in my drawers, and it doesn't fit well with the rest of my shadows. It is a really pretty color story. It has those pinky colors that I really do like, but it just, the packaging is not, I don't like it. Let's look at Anastasia for a minute. I find it odd that I only have 2 of these. I used to have almost all of her palettes, but I've just kind of slowly decluttered them over the years. So I have Soft Glam and Sultry. I used Soft Glam on my wedding day along with the Star palette, so it kind of has that little bit of, it means a little bit to me, you know what I mean? But when I really look at the colors, I like this Dusty Rose color, but I don't want to keep the whole palette for one color. And I know I have colors very similar to that in other palettes. My eye and my heart likes the sultry colors a little bit more. This is a newer palette. I bought this, I think November, not last year, but the year before. It's just more neutrals instead of super warms, whereas the Soft Glam is super warms. And then again, if I'm gonna use colors like that, I'm very likely gonna go ahead and use my Biba palette. I don't know that I would pull for the Soft Glam over the Biba palette. Holy moly, I can't believe it, but I'm gonna go ahead and declutter Soft Glam. And I'm gonna keep Sultry just because I really haven't used this one a ton. I mean, the eyeshadow brush is still in it. And usually at a certain point I throw that out because I get annoyed with it. The color story is very similar to the Naked Reloaded though. I mean, it even has the pop of peach in it. They both have the pop of peach. So I think next declutter I need to get rid of one or the other. I really don't need to keep both of those, but I'm going to for now. This is an easy declutter for me, my Lorac Mega Pro 3. I kept this through the last declutter thinking I would pull for it and use it, and I haven't, so I'm gonna go ahead and declutter it. The color story is really nice, but I just, again, if I'm gonna use colors like this, I'm likely gonna grab my Biba palette. Let's talk about Tarte for a minute, because I do have a couple of Tarte palettes. I have gotten rid of pretty much all of my Tarte palettes over the year because I've realized that I don't love the Tarte formula as much as other formulas. I just don't. The Maneater palette is probably my favorite. I'm gonna keep this one. This is such a nice palette to travel with. It's small and you have your wide variety of colors of neutrals. You have black, you have your shimmers. It's just, I like the color story a lot, so, and I've used it a lot. So I am gonna keep this one. It's just nice and little, and there's that. Tartelette and Bloom I like a lot. This one is probably one of my, if I had to pick one or the other as far as my favorite Tarte palette, I think the Bloom is my favorite. This one is my second favorite. I'm surprised I haven't hit pan on a lot of those, so I am gonna keep that one. This is a recent purchase, and I feel like I should not have bought this palette, but I got sucked into it. I was at Ulta and it was on sale. They were discontinuing it, and something about how pretty and cute it looked, I bought it, and I really shouldn't have, because when I look at the color story, it's so similar to something like the Sunset palette from Natasha Denona. And it's those warm colors that I just don't use. I haven't even stuck my finger in this yet, you guys. I think this is one that, because it is brand new and because I haven't used any of the colors, I haven't even swatched any of the colors, I would like to maybe try to sell this one on my PoshMark, because it's one that I know I safely can sell on my PoshMark. So I'm gonna declutter this one. That is literally just like flushing money down the toilet. But I think I could try to sell it, and because it's discontinued, there might be, you know, a market for it out there. Tartelette Toasted, again, is those warm colors, and when you kind of compare these two palettes together, the story is very, very similar. I haven't used this palette a ton. I got it during Ulta's 21 Days of Beauty, and it was another one that was like half off, and I was like, oh wow, I don't have that palette. I probably should have just turned away and not bought it, but I did. I did use it recently, actually, in a tutorial. I think I'm gonna keep it. Yeah, it kind of falls in the same category as the Sweet Peach palette as far as like the warms. Actually, I probably should just pick one or the other for these. Let's take a peek. I don't know that no, they're different. This is like way warm, whereas this one has different colors in it, so they're not the same. Dominique Cosmetics Latte palette. I loved this palette at first, but if I'm being honest, I don't pull for it very much at all anymore. The formula is good, the color story is good, but I'm not pulling for it over my Natasha Denona or Charlotte Tilbury. So I'd like to maybe give this to somebody who will actually use it so it can get some love. Let's look at Laura Lee Cosmetics. I also brought this to my wedding, and I think I dipped into like a color or two. I think I have another Laura Lee palette, or did I get rid of it? I have, yeah, it's right here. So it's the Violet Voss and Laura Lee palette. I haven't used either of these I mean, like I said, I think I used this one at my wedding, and it's almost my 2-year anniversary, so in 2 years. And then this one I was keeping because this was a limited edition, and I was like, God, if I get rid of it, I'll never be able to get it again. But I'm looking at the color story, and I don't think that I would be heartbroken to get rid of it. Especially, again, comparing it to like the Sunset palette. They're so similar. I'm gonna declutter both of these. Whew. Yep. I'm gonna declutter both of these. This is another one I think I'm gonna go ahead and declutter. I made this palette from Buxom. These palettes are really cool because you can buy the little individual pans and make your own color story. They did send this to me. They sent me a whole bunch of little pans, and I got to pick the ones that I wanted to put in here, and I made the palette myself, but I don't reach for it. Some of these I haven't even touched. Like this one, you could tell hasn't even been touched before, either of those. Okay, this is another one that I think I am gonna also go ahead and declutter. It's another one that I probably shouldn't have bought because it was a kind of fairly recent purchase. I just don't love the formula of this as much as I do other little palettes. It's the Bare Minerals Gen Nude Neutral Eyeshadow Palette. If I'm going to use colors like this and I'm going to use a small palette, I'm very likely going to pull for like the Natasha Denona Mini Glam palette. So I'm going to go ahead and declutter that. These Marc Jacobs palettes, I don't pull for these as much as I used to, and I think it's another thing where the packaging is just kind of weird. This one is Lolita. It's been discontinued for a while, but I love this palette so much. I've hit pan on a couple of the colors. This one is Scandalust, and this one is Stiletto. This one is the newest to my collection, and then this one is the second newest. This one is very old. But I am going to keep this one because it is my favorite and I just like it the most, so I'm going to keep it. The bummer is I bought both of these full price, you guys, at Sephora, and I've seen both of these at TJ Maxx like since. So I don't know that I'll ever buy another Marc Jacobs palette like this full price because they seem to always end up in TJ Maxx. And I should just wait until they're at TJ Maxx. I think if I'm looking at the colors, guys, I think I'm going to declutter Sweet Peach because this is so similar to Sweet Peach. In fact, I like the colors more in this one. I'm going to declutter Sweet Peach. Holy moly, I can't believe I'm going to do that. I'm going to keep all of these for now. Okay, getting down to some that I'm pretty sure I'm going to keep, like most of these. Huda Beauty Mauve Obsessions is a newer one. I haven't really used it too much, you could tell. I had to hunt this down and it's discontinued now, so, and I haven't really given it a shot. So I want to keep that one. This little Huda Beauty Nude Obsessions Light, I use this palette a ton. If you take away the pops of color, it's just a really nice neutral palette and I use it literally all the time. So I definitely want to keep that one. If I was going to get rid of one or the other, I would get rid of the mauve one. But again, I haven't used it enough to really make that decision yet. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that one. This palette by Makeup Geek was one that I put together and made myself. I haven't had a chance to use it yet. So I'm going to keep it, but it has a lot of those pinky nudes in it that I really like. But yeah, there's no way I would get rid of that one yet. I think I'm going to declutter my Z palette, you guys. Is that wild or what? I just don't reach for this. I mean, this has a mixture of Makeup Geek, Anastasia Beverly Hills, MAC, Morphe. I really like the color Pink Champagne. It is by far my favorite eyeshadow, I think, of all time. I have 2 pans of it in here. And I honestly feel like that's why I end up keeping this palette, is because I don't want to get rid of this color. So I almost wonder if I could somehow squeeze it in to another palette. You know what I mean? Like, this is a magnetic palette, but I don't want to get rid of any of these because I haven't, like, I just don't know that I'm ready to make that call yet, if I'm being honest. So I'm gonna set this to the side as a maybe. Huda Beauty Nude has been on the chopping block for a while. I've gone back and forth as to whether or not I want to keep this. The thing is, something about this shadow formula irritates my eyes, and I think it's the darker colors. It irritates my eyes and they get really, really itchy, and I keep using it, which is so silly. I'm afraid I might have the same problem with this mauve palette, but I haven't used it yet. Gosh, the color story is so similar on these 2 palettes. I think I'm gonna get rid of the nude. I hate that because I spent so much money on this palette. I think it was like $65, but I need to not irritate my eyes. Kat Von D Shade and Light. I bought this at TJ Maxx. It was one that I probably shouldn't have bought because I look at it and I don't know that I've ever used this palette. I don't think I have. I'm gonna go ahead and declutter it. It's one that I could probably get at least a couple of dollars out of on PoshMark. Charlotte Tilbury, I'm definitely keeping these. I love Charlotte Tilbury palettes. This palette, this is the Darling palette. It runs very warm. It looks very neutral, even cool online, but it runs very warm. A lot of people have asked me about this palette. So because of that, like, but I don't use this one as much as like Pillow Talk, but I do use it. But because of that, I'm kind of rethinking this one. No, the colors are different. I mean, there is like your copper and then like this shimmery color, but they are, okay, they're different enough. So definitely gonna keep that. And then this is the Pillow Talk Instant Eye Palette. It's limited edition. This is one that another one I don't think I'll ever get rid of. There's just so much love behind this palette. This was sent to me in PR. And when I opened that package, you guys, I can't even explain to you how excited I was. And just the memories behind how And I love the palette itself too. So here's what's left. I have this Ofra palette. It's the Sweet Dreams palette. I like this palette, but I have a lot of palettes with this color story, like the pinky kind of neutrals. This was gifted to me in PR, so I can't sell it, but I might try to give it, actually, I think about it now, and this Buxom was PR too, so I can't sell this one either. By the way, anything that was given to me in PR, I would never try to resell. I've had that question before. I will just give it to somebody. I might try to give this to a friend. Both of these are one of my sisters. I think that's the only, oh, the Lancome one also. But I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of the Ofra one just because I have so many others that are that same color story. This was a gift from my mom, not this last Christmas, but the Christmas before. I think it's because it's so big. I rarely pull for this, you guys. But when I open it up, it's a Too Faced palette. I guess I should have put it with the Too Faced palettes earlier. But when I open it up, it is so fun. And I wish I would use it more. You know what I mean? I think I'm gonna keep it and just try to make an attempt to pull for it a little bit more. So there's that. This Jaclyn Hill palette is really good. I also find that I don't pull for this as much as I used to. I think it's because it's so big, and I tend to use smaller palettes more. They just fit in my everyday makeup drawer a little bit better, and they fit in my travel bag a little bit better, and I just pull for the smaller things now. These big palettes like this, I don't pull for very often. I'm not quite ready to part with this palette, so I'm gonna keep it for now, but this is one that I honestly might declutter, like in the next declutter. I just have to check myself and see how often I use it before I make that call. Tarte Beauty Textured Neutrals. I mean, it's still in its sleeve. I'm gonna throw away the sleeve. I'm gonna keep this one because, again, it's a fairly new palette. I've got it within the last 6 months. I feel like the color story is kind of similar to other palettes, but these glitters truly steal the show. They make the palette that it is, in my opinion, and I don't have anything like those glitters in any other palette or even singles anywhere else. So because of that, I am gonna keep this. And then these two palettes by MAC. MAC Selena is very new. It's my newest palette. I just recently got it, and at first I thought I wasn't really gonna use it very much, but if you cover up these 4 middle colors, you get a really nice neutral quad. So I think I actually might throw this in my travel bag when I travel in the next couple of months to kind of force myself to use it. But I'm gonna keep it because it's literally my newest palette. And then this one is another one that I shouldn't have bought. I truly shouldn't have bought it, but I did. It was a limited edition palette by MAC. I bought it about a year and a half ago. If you recall this collection, like the marbled pink with the rose gold foil, I mean, it was when that collection came out. I've never used this palette. I don't know that I've even swatched this palette, but the color story is so beautiful, you guys. It's just kind of like cool toned neutrals with like a pop of gold, but if you take that gold out, you get your cool toned neutrals. Maybe I should travel with this one instead, because I don't want to get rid of the palette. I want to use it. I want to give it a shot, you know? So I'm going to keep that one as well. The more I think about it, I think I'm going to go ahead and declutter my Z palette. I wish there was a way I could keep Pink Champagne though. I just don't have anything to put it in. Nothing. I don't know what I could put this in. I don't have like a magnetic palette, like a 4-pan magnetic palette. I was trying to think, like, is there a way I could squeeze it into this Makeup Geek palette? Actually, ha! Okay, it's not like stuck in there in any way, but at least it like kind of fits in there for now until I can figure out what I want to do with it. Okay, that makes me feel better. Now I can get rid of this and not feel any remorse. Okay, so I am keeping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. And I am decluttering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Wow. Off the top of my head, maybe that's like a third if I'm doing my math correctly. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with this declutter if I'm being honest. Again, there's some that I can't sell. There's some that I will likely put on my PoshMark eventually at some point in time. I just don't know when. And there's some that need to go in the trash can. But I hope that you guys enjoyed watching this video. I definitely need to reevaluate when I buy palettes. I think sometimes I just get so caught up with the deal that I don't necessarily think through, like, do I have other palettes that look the same? Am I actually going to use this palette? And so I think I need to be more diligent and aware of that when I get that urge to buy a new palette. But I think I'm pretty set in the palette department. There's one that I really have my eye on. It's the Anastasia Beverly Hills Norvina palette, the limited edition one, volume 4 or whatever, that just came out, that I think I might ask for my birthday. But other than that, I feel like I'm pretty set on palettes for now. And this is good timing because Lincoln is waking up. I can hear him on, yep, he's awake, little monster. So that's the end of this video. I'm gonna go get my baby, and next is gonna be like little single eyeshadows. So if you're interested in that, then that's coming up soon. Other than that, I'll talk to you guys next time.